As a beginning reporter, I covered the construction of the Minneapolis Convention Center. Governor Perpich and a bipartisan coalition of legislators back in the early 80s agreed to move forward with the expansion of the convention center, and that industry has helped fuel the economic growth throughout the entire state for many, many years. The plan before you will do that by putting this billion-dollar investment in the hospitality industry, as well as allowing us to solidify the funding for the convention facility in Minneapolis to allow long-term sustainability for that as well. It's clearly important for us to move forward on jobs, but it's also important to do that in a way that's prudent and fiscally responsible.
We don't want people voting on this, guys like me. If we're 1 in 5, this probably would never pass in a referendum. Bonds on these bills, this is so complicated over here. Most Minnesotans only know bond by Barry, James, and Bale. Seriously, that's a fact. You guys are very educated people over here, and I don't want to risk this putting up to a vote if we're having, you know, a year like last year. Does anyone think that this would pass last year in November? Absolutely not. As far as if we let this team go right now, and 3 years go by and we say we want to get an NFL team back, number one, they ain't going to come back. Number two, what would that cost?
During my day job, because this racket doesn't pay the bills, it's actually my job and responsibility to create and know jobs, not just in the state of Minnesota, but across the country. My employer is the largest employer in the world. We actually generate over $20 billion a year in just temporary jobs. A lot of times I'll hear people say that construction jobs are just temporary, and I got to say that's rather frustrating. When I look at companies like IBM, Accenture, Manpower, and Experis, these are billion-dollar corporations making money off of temporary jobs. And I don't want to think that, you know, looking at companies like IBM or Accenture, technology companies that are temporary jobs, are superior to construction jobs. Because in my opinion, I think pounding a rivet into steel, drilling core holes for conduit, or hanging sheetrock is a heck of a lot harder than pounding on a keyboard all day. In front of me, I have the Manpower Employment Outlook Survey for Q2 of 2012. What this says is that most industries, whether it's manufacturing, technology, or professional services, are going to grow 20 to 30% over the next quarter. What it also says is that 1 in 10 construction companies is going to be laying off. In front of you, you have an opportunity to put laborers back to work in a sector that's looking at 20% unemployment.
But our region is, in fact, a region. It is not a single city. It is the Twin Cities, and our great strength is in the ability to promote across the globe the strength of our cities and this region that is really very unique. And there's two sides to that equation. We're not as much the Twin Cities as we are the Siamese Twin Cities, in the sense that you can't have one that is healthy and one that is struggling if we're going to have the vitality that we need to be able to do this. What we seek, and I think while I would suggest that I'm appreciative of what has been introduced to date by Senator Rosen, it is the beginning of what I think it needs to happen in terms of parity, so that our facilities, the RiverCentre complex, the Xcel Energy Center, the types of things that we can do in downtown also have the resources that they need to survive.
That the money is spent across, but they're collected in Minneapolis, and they're not collected in St. Paul. So therefore, St. Paul has an advantage in that you don't have as high hospitality taxes in your downtown region as we do in Minneapolis, and our businesses are competing, paying for the convention center and for the downtown amenities or whatever, based on that tax collection. That's higher. So you can't say, well, Minneapolis, we should be able to collect taxes in Minneapolis and pay for the Xcel Center so they can better compete with the Target Center, or vice versa.
It's not like the state didn't put money in, a lot of it, to build that, okay? So you can't take credit for the income because you wouldn't have had a building.